Activist Sushil Pandit also on the broadcast with us. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Sushil Pandit. Does this report really surprise you? It says very clearly UK must refocus on the threat that is posed by militant Islamism after being too concerned with right-wing extremism. So all this while right-wing extremism was called out, it accounts for only about 10% of the problems there, whereas the key focus is on Islamist terrorism. Mr. Sushil Pandit, you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you for having me on your show. Good morning. You are right. It is political correctness. In fact, the entire political class of United Kingdom has been fighting shy of admitting to even grooming gangs, to even jehadi brides who went by scores to Syria. And today they are campaigning to bring back Shahida Begum. You see, JKLF, a proscribed organization in India, operates freely. It participates in the elections by appealing to the Muslims to vote for Labour, Jeremy Corbyn, in 2019 December elections. So, United Kingdom is about mollycoddling Islamist terror. Openly and brazenly, they let go of them. They don't talk about them. They fight shy of admitting to them. They think that by befriending them, by mollycoddling them, they will avert a fight, a contest, a conflict, which is not going to happen. This has been the story in India also. They must learn from us. We have been trying to befriend jihad in Kashmir, elsewhere, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. We have not been able to win friends among jihadis. We send a lot of flood relief and earthquake relief all over the world to befriend jihadis. We do not win friends. We do not win hearts and minds. This has been a lesson. But political correctness is such a crippling, paralyzing thought that no matter what kind of regime you get, no matter what kind of leadership you get, you always fight shy. You always step back. Instead of admitting the truth, instead of stating the facts, we try and prevaricate, paper over, cover up, blame someone else.
Yes, and you know, very recently we saw it in Leicester as well. We saw after the riots, even though there were peaceful Hindus who were targeted in the Leicester attacks, there was an ecosystem that descended immediately after that, saying, you know, there was provocation. These were not riots. These were, you know, there was provocation from the other side, and that's the reason why they responded from this side. There were reports that came out. There were, you know, so many articles that came out in defense of this as well. So this kind of a radicalization in the UK is a real problem, but people are refusing to accept it.
In Leicester attacks, when they arrested some of the hooligans from Islamist side, they arrested equal number of Hindus in order to balance it out. This is the level of perversion. In order to mollycoddle Islamists, they arrested large number of innocent Hindus in order to say that we are even-handed. This is the level of political correctness which has led to perversion in fighting Islamist terror. Instead of fighting it, instead of taming it, they are trying to befriend it, win hearts and minds. This is a widespread epidemic. In fact, it has become a pandemic. Winning hearts and minds of the Islamists has become as big a pandemic as coronavirus. It is crippling political leadership across the world. We have to call it out for what it is.
And very clearly the report also mentions a Pakistan connection. It says that the Muslim population in UK is getting radicalized by the connection with Pakistan, with the expansionist model of the Islamic State. So that's the extent to which this radicalization is going on, and there's a very clear Pakistan connect that has also been mentioned.
You can look at their prison population in order to see it. There are only 4% Muslims in United Kingdom, and their population in prison is more than 18%, almost close to 20%. Whereas Hindus, who are more than 2% population in UK, have barely 300 prisoners. This is not even 0.01%. You can see where is the criminality, where is the violence, where is the breaking of law. But political correctness does not allow you to admit it. Political correctness, if you doesn't allow you to admit it, how will you even
very
start
quickly, I also want to ask you, this report obviously very clearly calls out that ecosystem that refuses to accept it, refuses to call out Islamic terrorism for what it is. Politicians in UK are trying to hype the right-wing terrorism, which accounts for only 10% of the actual cases. That's what the report says. Do you see this resonating in India as well? That's the question. Request you to stay on with us. Mr. R.P. Singh is also on the broadcast with us. Mr. Singh, this report calls out an ecosystem that has refused to accept Islamic terrorism. In the UK, that's the biggest threat. This case clearly says that 90% of the cases, and this is the biggest threat in the UK, is of Islamist terrorism.
Well, there's no doubt that the youth is being radicalized through the new medium, the social medium, and an objective is to spread the terrorism, to spread the Islam through terrorist methodology, which is not prescribed in Islam, but still that's the way they are pursuing it. And then the hub of this is Pakistan, where it all generates from, whether it is Islamic terrorism or whether it is Khalistanis. I mean, for India also they have specific two-tier policy of K2, Khalistan and Kashmir. They use the sentiments of the religion to radicalize the youth in both religions, whether it is Khalistan, whether it is the Islam.
Yes, and the report very clearly says that the political leaders, because of political correctness that they stand for, are trying to instead hype the right-wing terrorism, which is only about 10% of the actual problem. So there is a lot of focus on right-wing terrorism, but refusing to accept the Islamic terrorism, which accounts for 90% of it. Why do you think that is?
Well, let me make it very categorically clear that Hindu can't be terrorist. As a ideology, as a ecosystem, as the religion, as a culture, they can't be terrorists because they believe in welfare of the world. They believe in welfare of all. When I say all, including animals, including everyone. I mean, so they can't be terrorists at all. But yes, there is a perception being created to radicalize the other part of the society. So, and then they have been successful in that. There's no doubt they have been successful in that they have been able to radicalize the society within the Islamic framework and within the Khalistani framework, threatening them with the Hindu, building up a Hindu phobia there.
Okay, all right. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast. So this is a report in the UK that speaks about the vast majority of oil plots being Islamist in nature. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Singh. Mr. Sushil Pandit, I want to talk about the Pakistan connection, which is very clearly mentioned in the report. And India has also faced the terrorism, the kind of extremism that comes in from Pakistan. UK as well, not new to this kind of terrorism, the kind of radicalization that is seen in the people of UK, the Muslim population in the UK, with a Pakistan connect, very clearly mentioned in the report.
Which is absolutely right. All the grooming gang convicts, who are more than 45, are Muslims of Pakistani origin. All the terrorist bombers, YouTube bombers, were of the Pakistani origin Muslims. There is a network of mosques. There is a network of preachers and venom-spitting, rabble-rousing preachers who have been let in. JKLF is a Pakistan-based terror organization operating in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and infiltrating into Indian Kashmir. This is the tragedy. And the biggest response that the leadership in UK is to prevaricate about it, to deny it, live in denial, to do nothing about it. They are let off, not even with as much as registering a case or a warning. So, and Pakistanis enjoy dual citizenship. They carry two passports. They can, the UK passport as well as the British passport. They are a privileged lot, and they misuse this privilege by indulging in all kinds of nonsense. And they have a huge political clout. They have concentrated themselves into ghettos in several British constituencies, and thus, Thus, they have MPs speaking up for them in the parliament. They have used their number and clout in order to worm their influence into the British polity. And Britain being an open democratic society has been nudging and winking about it as opposed to doing something strongly about it. The present British Prime Minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak, while campaigning for Prime Ministership within Conservative Party, repeatedly said that we will have to shed political correctness to name the enemy, to name the problem. He specifically referred to the safety of young daughters. He himself has 2 daughters. He said, we will not let grooming gang kind of mindset to prevail. But let us see what he does on the ground. This was good for campaigning.
Yes, so I want to bring in Pradeep here as well. Pradeep, when, the report speaks of radicalization of the UK Muslims, it also mentions this Pakistan connection. And a lot of times for the radicalization, the rhetoric around Kashmir has also been used in the UK. And this is something that's not new to India. In India as well, there is an ecosystem that continues to deny it completely. In the UK, in the report, it clearly says not just radicalization from Pakistan, but the use of the rhetoric around Kashmir.
There are 2 things. There used to be a phrase called all roads lead to Rome. But when it comes to the terror-related activities, all roads lead to Pakistan that we have seen. And Sushil Pandit was rightly mentioning about how there is a network of clerics and the mosques and how these mosques are used as incubators of radicalization. And then the second thing is that educational institutions in UK are also playing a very dirty role. Why? Because they are the one who are providing platform to these radical organizations. We have seen that few months back, there was a program called Dismantling Hindutva. And that program was organized on a day while there was a 20th anniversary of 9/11. Instead of fighting against jihad, they are trying to dismantle Hindutva. That means you are creating a wrong enemy and fighting against a wrong enemy. That means you are allowing them to further flourish and spread tentacles. And the second thing is just few weeks back, there was another program where a separatist element who was spewing venom against India, Muzammil Thakur, he was allowed platform in London School of Economics. Unless and until these educational institutions stop providing platform to these organizations, these Islamist radical elements, I think things are not really going to end, because you provide them an intellectual support. Once you give an intellectual support, you give them a relevance also in this present ecosystem. And in such a manner, you will not be able to change things on the ground. What really is required is that they have to crack down all these universities, don't allow such programs, don't allow provide platform to these elements. And also, you rightly said that instead of right-wing extremism, they should fight against Islamic terror. Rightly said by Sushil Pandit, look at the bombers, even many of the terror-related activities. How that started from Pakistan, how Pakistan had been aiding and abetting them and trying to radicalize these youth, and how many of them, even the youth in the UK, got radicalized. They went to Syria and they went to Iraq and they became part of ISIS or Al-Qaeda to fight against the different forces there. So I think the time is high that they need to stop being in a denial mode. One. The second is that the corrective measures are to be taken. And third is that they have to learn from India. This appeasement policy is not really going to work. If you are going to appease these Islamic radical elements, you are creating a Frankenstein monster, and that's really going to swallow you one day. Because Indians...
And that's the reason why the report mentions it as the biggest threat to the UK. This is Britain's counter-terrorism program, Prevent, that has published this report that nails the lies of the ecosystem all along. Let me go back to Meenakshi on the details that are coming in of the Pakistan Connect, because the report mentions hardline Pakistan clerics who are well established, and of course the hatred is being fanned by what's happening in Kashmir, with a narrative, a wrong narrative being spread around Kashmir. Meenakshi.
Absolutely, Pratibha. Now, as far as this UK report is concerned, they've not only named Islamist terror, but also the Pakistan Connect. Without much ado, let's take a look at this extremely significant point which has been mentioned in the report. I'm going to read it verbatim. It says it's common for narratives around blasphemy in the UK to have a connection back to hardline Pakistani clerics. I repeat, hardline Pakistani clerics have been nailed in the report. It also says that these hardline clerics have established a presence in Pakistan. The report goes on to say that I have a similar concern over how rhetoric from Pakistan is impacting UK Muslim communities when it comes to inflaming anti-India sentiment. So this is what India has been saying. This point, Pratibha, very, very significant, which we must highlight, that these hardliney Pakistani clerics are brainwashing the youth, UK Muslim youth against India. It says particularly around the subject of Kashmir. So it's around Kashmir that the radicalization, brainwashing is happening. It says that there is also an element of crossover between those who seek to impose limits around blasphemy with those who voice incendiary rhetoric on Kashmir. So incendiary rhetoric on Kashmir. Pratibha, one more very, very quick point and I'll toss back to you. It says that I've seen evidence of UK extremist group as well as a Pakistani cleric with UK calling for use of violence in Kashmir, and I've seen this evidence demonstrating that flashpoints related to Kashmir lead to significant surge in interest from the UK Islamists. So in a nutshell, what these 2 pointers of the report is saying, that these hardline Pakistani clerics are brainwashing Muslim youth in UK in the name of Kashmir. Pratibha, back to you.
Absolutely. So, you know, very, very significant at a time when people are refusing to accept Islamic terrorism. The report nailing the lies and telling what the ground situation is in the UK. But the question being whether this reality is now accepted or not. Thanking Mr. Sushil Pandit, Pradeep and Meenakshi for joining us on the broadcast. This remains a top focus here on Times Now as the report flags out what India has been saying, the threat of Islamist terror.